Okay, so this is Business 436 Unit Economics Quiz question number 2. And again, read these so that we can go through these fairly quick. Okay, so the question is just basically you figured out a new business which you make you a rich person based. Oh, by the way, I figured out my technical difficulty with that noise. Actually, my phone was too close to the computer and it was causing that interference sound. Okay, so based on market research, your brilliant intuition, you're convinced that you can sell widgets to a very broad swath of students at Cal Poly. Okay, here's the information. Sales price per widget, $40. Number of sales, 200 units per week. Sales commission, 15% per unit. Cost of material, $10 per unit. Of course, these two are variable costs. Rent per year. Now, these are all in years. So that's fixed period costs, right? But so this thing's going to be based on a yearly basis. $10,000 per year rent. Remember, these are fixed period costs. If you're not making anything, you're going to incur them anyway, but they're for a period of time. Okay, so they're still fixed period costs. Salaries 40,000, marketing 15,000 per year for each one of those. Widget making machine 52,000. Of course, that would be your primary sunk investment, PSI. Fixed period costs, FPCs. You borrow this money from your uncle at 0% interest. Now, if they had an interest in there, you'd have to obviously take that into your calculations, but for this one, there is no interest. So the two questions, how many weeks will it take you to make enough money to pay back? Remember, payback. We did break even on the previous question. This is payback, where you're paying back the cost of the primary sunk investment and any money that you owe, like interest or something. It says round up to the nearest full week. Second part is, make sure you do the second part if there's two parts. How much money will you have when you decide to shut down the business after 2 years and take a vacation? Okay, so let's go through this. Again, what I do is I put the information into 4 different categories: variable costs, fixed period costs, primary sunk investment, and then, of course, the information that they give you that you need to figure out some stuff. Okay, so for instance, $40 sales price per unit, that should say per unit on it. We'll need to use that. 200 units per week. The reason they tell you that is because you're going to want to annualize this. So that'd be 200 units times 52 weeks in a year. So remember, that's 52 weeks in a year. So it'd be 10,400 units. We do that calculation down here, 200 units per week times 52 weeks in a year. It's 10,400 units per year. And then for commission, $40, they said it was a 15% commission per unit. $40 times 0.15 is 6 per unit of commission. So let's look at our variable cost first. $6 per unit commission. $10 per unit material cost, and that they told us that on the worksheet that the cost of materials per unit was $10. So that tells you your variable cost per unit, okay? Your fixed period cost, they told you, was $10,000 per year in rent, $40,000 per year salary, $15,000 per year marketing. So your fixed period cost, your FPC, is $65,000. Remember, your primary sunk investment, the machine, was $52,000. Okay, so they want to know the payback of that $52,000. Remember, they're not asking for break even. Break even has to do with the fixed period cost and the contribution margin. You take the fixed period cost and divide it by the contribution margin. That tells you how many units it'll take to break even. And remember, break even is where you've paid all your variable costs and you've covered all your fixed period costs. It's the number of units it takes to do that. That's back to the original lemonade stand thing. Remember, you've got your price, your variable costs per unit, your contribution margin per unit. You take your fixed period costs, add them all up, divide it by your contribution per unit, and that tells you how many units it takes to to cover your fixed period costs. And that's the point where what you're making pays for itself. After that, then you've got profit that'll be used as profit or to pay off the primary sunk investment. But until you get to that break-even point, you still are losing money on every unit because you're recovering your variable costs, but you haven't covered all your fixed period costs. Once you've covered all your fixed period costs and you're covering your variable costs every unit, now you're at break-even, and now you can start making money. You might have to pay off other stuff like your primary sunk investment, but at least you're starting to make money. Okay? Okay, so what they want, remember, is what they call the payout, not the break even. So we were just talking about the break even, but they really want the payout, which is down below here, which is what you go through and figure out when you've covered your fixed period cost. Now you have extra money to pay off your primary sunk investment. In this, they did it as units per day, but this will be units per year, times the contribution amount. That gives you your revenue per year, basically. So just think about this on a yearly basis. Cups sold per day, so this is widgets sold per year, times your contribution margin, which is your gross profit, right? So that's your net profit per year before you've paid off your fixed period costs. Then you subtract your fixed period costs from that for the year, and then that leaves you what you've got to pay off your primary sunk investment. So we'll go through that. And then once you know how much you've got to pay off your primary sunk investment, you just figure out what percentage they are, because it's what you've got available. I mean, your primary sunk investment divided by what you've got available to pay it off, that gives you a percentage of years, and then you multiply times 52 to get to the weeks it'll take to pay it off. So we'll go through it right now. So basically what you want to do is annualize everything. So we'll go through the contribution margin. It's $40 per unit. Variable cost is $16. Your sales price is $40. Your variable cost is $16, so your contribution margin is $24 per unit. But remember that we want to annualize this because you're trying to figure this out because your fixed period costs are on a yearly basis. So we know that there's 200 units per week. That's why they tell you that, times 52 weeks. So it's 10,400 units per year. Okay, so you just take your revenue, which is your price per unit, times the 10,400. That means you're making 416,000 per year gross margin or gross revenue. Your variable cost $16 per unit times 10,400 units. So your variable costs per year are 166,400. So now you can just subtract these two, or you can multiply your contribution margin times 10,400. You get the same answer. That's your contribution margin per year. So now they want you to subtract your fixed period costs, because remember, you got to cover your fixed period costs first before you start paying back your primary sunk investment. That's the same thing that we were doing on this worksheet for the lemonade stand. You're paying off. You see how you subtract your fixed period costs? They said daily, but this would be yearly. So your contribution per year, say, you pay off your fixed period costs, and that's how much yearly contribution you have to pay off your primary sunk investment. The same thing. So you've got your contribution margin per year. You subtract your fixed period costs. So now you have $184,600 to contribution margin per year for the first year available to pay out, I call it payback, your primary sunk investment. Okay? And this is per year. Okay, so remember, don't get this confused. Your primary sunk investment is $52,000. You've got $184,000. So you divide the you've got $184,000 available to pay it off, your gross profit for the year. So you divide the $52,000 by the $184,000. So obviously you're going to be paying it off less than a year because you've got more money in a year than it takes by about 3 times to pay it off, right? So you're dividing the primary sunk investment by how much you've got for that year, your gross profit. Let me turn that down. And then it tells you how many years you'll pay that off in. It's 0.2817, okay, years. But they asked you on the question, it says how many weeks will it take to get enough money to pay back your uncle? Because he loaned you the money, right? And it says round it up to the nearest week. So you know there's 52 weeks in a year, and this is in years, right? Because it's you spent, I guess it's not, it's your primary sunk investment is just your primary sunk investment, so it's really not per year. But you know that you have a gross profit, a gross contribution margin per year of 184,600. So you divide the 52,000 by the 184,600, just like you would divide, if this was a smaller number, remember you divide it by whatever your contribution margin is for the period, and that gets you 0.2817 years. You multiply times 52 weeks in a year because you want to find how many weeks it is. That's 14.64, but they said to round up, so it's going to take you 15 weeks to pay off the primary sunk investment. So now you've paid that off. So now there's two parts to this question, or to this question. The second part is, how much money will you have when you decide to shut down the business after 2 years and take a vacation? Okay, so don't be fooled by this, because you just got to remember that what you're doing basically is paying your uncle back at year 1, right? You're paying him the 52,000 back. So you know that using these numbers, you have $184,600 dollars a year in contribution margin, which is the same as gross profit, right? To pay back the investment. So you can pay back that investment the first year. So to figure out the answer to the question, you take that 184,600, right? The contribution margin available, again, this is gross profit, to pay out the PSI, the primary sunk investment, per year. It's 184,600 the first year, and then PSI paid back. You're going to pay back the primary sunk investment, the 52,000. And again, he said there was no interest on this. You'd have to figure in the interest part if there was interest. So you subtract the 52,000, and so you'll have 132,600 at the end of first year. I'll put end of first year left, right? That's your profit. Now, they want to know how much you'll have after 2 years. Well, you know that you make 184,600 every year after you've paid off your fixed period costs, right? And you've already paid off your primary sunk investment. We subtracted that right there. So now you don't even have to pay that off. So now you had 132,000 net of paying off the primary sunk investment after the first year. The second year, you'll be able to use you'll be able to keep the whole 184,600 because you don't have to pay off the primary sunk investment. So you add those two together, and you walk away with $317,200 after 2 years. Okay? So that's the answer that he wanted. Remember that you got to know the difference between payback, or payout, I call it payback, and break even. But he didn't ask for break even on this one, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay? So if you remember what break even is your fixed period costs divided by your contribution margin. Okay? And that's in units. That's how many units it'll take you to do that. He didn't ask in weeks or anything. He asked in a number of units. If he asked you how many weeks it would take, well, let's just do this first. Okay, so we know that your fixed period costs, that's where those salaries and rents per year and all that stuff. That was these numbers. Your fixed period cost for the rent, the salaries, and the marketing was $65,000 per year, right? We knew your contribution margin per unit was $24 per unit. So for break even, it's usually figured in units, how many units it takes to break even. You just divide the fixed period cost by the contribution margin, and that gets you the number of units. Remember, you can't make 2,708.33 units, so you got to round it up to 2,709. Now, what if they ask you how many weeks would it take to break even? Well, if you remember from the info, they said you're making 200 units per week. So all you do is take the number of units, 2,709, divided by 200, and let's break out the trusty calculator. And remember, take your calculator to class. These are simple math problems, so you really don't need this one, but I would use this one just to use it. Make sure you always clear everything at the bottom. 2,709 divided by 200. And remember, he's not asking for this. For break even, they want to know the numbers of units, but if he asks how many weeks it would take to break even, it would be 13.55 weeks. Or, you know, if he wanted you to round up, if he says round up, or 14 weeks. Typically, break even is the number of units, because remember, it's your fixed period cost divided by your contribution margin per unit, and that gets you the number of units it would take to break even. But it's a simple calculation to figure out how many weeks, because they told you that there was 200 units per week. So that's the answers, even the ones they weren't asking for. On number 2, hopefully this is a much clearer video. Like I said, I got rid of the technical problem for the sound.